Hello and welcome to Line and Mouse Commentary. I'm Holland and this is my best friend Tori.
Hi.
If you're new to our show, we rank various forms of entertainment out of a total score of 10 with only 2 points allowed for our personal taste. Just be sure to tread lightly. There will be hot takes and not really spoilers if you've noticed the title. But there will be hot takes. So, cut to the intro.
Yes, there will be some hot takes.
There's always hot takes.
There's always hot takes.
Always. So, the category for this episode is another album. So, I chose this topic. This is the album Whirlwind, specifically the Deluxe edition by Lainey Wilson. So, I do have some information about the album that I'm going to read. Feel free to take a listen to the album first if you'd like to, or if you just want to listen and find something new, you can just listen to it blind. So this is from LaineyWilson.com, so obviously it's a little fluffed to sound really good about the artist. So Whirlwind is Wilson's latest studio album, Whirlwind, also earned a Grammy nomination for Best Country Album at the 67th Annual Grammy Awards, which was in 2025, and was hailed by the Tennessean as the best release of her career. Whirlwind debuted at number 8 on the all-genre Billboard 200 chart and number 13 on the UK Official Albums chart, marking Wilson's first top 10 and top 15 entries, respectively. It was produced by Jay Joyce. Whirlwind provides a daringly honest exploration of Wilson's life and journey around the globe. A diverse yet sonically cohesive collection of songs, the album blends genres while remaining true to her Western roots. Lainey Wilson won 4 awards at the 60th Annual ACM Awards: Entertainer of the Year, which was her second consecutive win, Female Artist of the Year, her third consecutive win, Album of the Year for Whirlwind, and Artist Songwriter of the Year. So that is all from her website. So the rest is from the super reputable Wikipedia because, it's got
always
easy,
100% right.
Easy access is what we're talking about.
It's just nice to have the information compiled in one place.
And we don't have a research team.
Yeah.
So it's just us.
We're doing our best over here.
So a little bit of...
Take everything that we regurgitate from Wikipedia with a grain of salt. It's eligible for reproof.
Exactly. So Wilson co-wrote all 14 of the tracks on Whirlwind, so that's the original release. Due to her busy schedule, Wilson said she focused on quality over quantity with respect to writing songs for Whirlwind, a different approach compared to her past projects. She wrote several songs with the Heart Wranglers, a songwriting collective consisting of herself, Tranny Anderson, and Dallas Wilson, as well as new collaborators such as John DeCicius. I don't know how to say his name.
Sounds good
to me. It has a little accenty thing on the O, so it's not an English pronouncing last name. The album features a collaboration with Miranda Lambert on Good Horses, which the two co-wrote with Luke Dick at Lambert's Farm in May 2023 and previewed it with a joint performance in Las Vegas ahead of its release. Hang Tight Honey, which is the lead single of the album, was released on May 20th, 2024. Country's Cool Again, 4x4 by You, and Good Horses were issued ahead of the album as promotional singles. 4x4 by You was announced alongside the album's release as its second single to country radio, impacting on September 3rd, 2024. It was the most added song at the format upon impact, receiving 65 first-week ads. A deluxe reissue of Whirlwind was released August 22nd, 2025, which is what we're reviewing for this show. That was 1 year after the album's initial release date. So originally, the original album was released in 2024. Somewhere Over Laredo was released as a single to country radio on May 25th, 2025, so prior to the album release, serving as the overall single from the album. Somewhere Over Laredo was nominated for Best Country Solo Performance and Best Country Song at the 68th Grammy Awards, which was in 2026, so the year of this release. So that's just a brief synopsis of kind of the information of the background of the album, as well as some accolades that it's received pretty recently. So Tori is going to kick us off into our first category.
Okay. So our first category, well, before I get into that, let me put a big ol' umbrella disclaimer on everything I'm going to say. I am not very familiar with the country music scene in general. The last time I consistently listened to country was in the 90s as a child, And since then, I just don't have a very good understanding of what the genre looks like much nowadays, because it's not the genre that I find myself generally leaning towards when I listen to music. So if I say anything that sounds unintelligent in regards to talking about this album, please know that this is not the wheelhouse of music that I frequent very much. So that being said, first category with music is lyrics and writing. We allot 2 points for this. I gave this 1 point out of 2. The first thing that I notice is that the topics covered in this album do unfortunately fall a little into the country music tropes. There's a lot of references to drinking beer and being a good old country girl, loving a good old country boy, and horses and trucks and tractors and boots and things like that. So there is a lot of like that country trope. I don't necessarily think that this is a negative or positive, just a very noticeable, okay, from the get-go, even if you were to just read the lyrics without listening to the songs, you could very easily identify where this genre, what genre these lyrics fall under because of that. So I think that it is interesting that the verbiage that Lainey Wilson uses a lot is Southern, even down to grammar. She will change verb tenses to be a little incorrect, but it's how people talk in the Deep South. And growing up in the South, I identify with a lot of that. And, it's normal verbiage that I've grown up hearing, even if I know it may not necessarily be correct grammar. First of all, so the first song on the album is called Keep Up with Jones. And I was listening to this song. Actually, this is the only song I listened to twice because I was trying to figure out who Jones is. Mm-hmm. And I never figured that out. Is Jones like a person? Is Jones like the allusion or like allegory for a brand of a product? I really could not figure this out. Question to you, who is Jones? Do you know who that is?
Yeah, so this is just, I kind of, in a sense, it's not like a rebuttal to your point,
okay,
but I think it's just a very clear distinction that Lainey Wilson is writing to an audience that is already in the country music scene.
And again, that's not me.
And so that's another reason that we pick certain topics for this podcast. Tori is not a country music fan. I would say borderline country music.
You consume
enjoy
it way more frequently than
Definitely.
I do. Yeah.
But Jones, it's a play on keeping up with the Joneses. So the phrase, I'm trying to keep up with Jones. But Jones, the individual, is George Jones, who's a country music star who was known for his insane, like, intense partying. So alcoholism. And,
I see. Okay, so that makes sense.
So Jones is an individual, but he was a kind of like again, I'm not a huge country music aficionado, but he was very much like the party rock star, like, drunk women, partying, going hard every night, playing really, aggressive music, just kind of like that hardcore rock star image in the country music genre of his time. I think he was really big. Actually, I'm going to look it up. So, what year he was really big. I want to say it was like 70s, 80s, but I'm really not sure. But it's George Jones.
Okay, so while you look that up, so that song, while it's fun to listen to, and this is going to be a lot of the theme of what I have to say about lyrics and writing, is that a lot of these songs are nice to listen to, but some of the lyrics kind of go over my head. So I think that this album is going to be much more enjoyable to somebody who is familiar and likes country music and all of the references that may come with that. This happens again in the song in the deluxe version, the song King Ranch, King George, King James.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I was able to use the context clues of those lyrics a little bit better to figure out what she was talking about. She was talking about a vehicle, a singer, and then the Bible. So that one's a little easier to kind of use the full context of the song to figure out. But in Can't Keep Up with Jones, I was like very confused. And so again, my enjoyment wasn't squashed, but I was left feeling a little bit like, it's like when somebody has like an inside joke at a table and you don't know the inside joke and you're like, ha 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 ha, but you don't actually really know what you're laughing about. That's kind of how I felt about a few of the songs in this album.
So just as a little brief interjection, George Jones he was known as the Rolls Royce of country music and had more than 160 chart singles to his name from 1955 until his death in 2013.
Wow. Okay.
And
So he was like the guy.
Yeah. He recorded a song, White Lightning, which is referenced in the song.
Okay.
He was known as,
I've heard that song.
When she sings, I've been known to play possum on a bar stool. That was his kind of, nickname was the possum because he would fall asleep at the bar because he drinks so heavily.
And fall over, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. All right.
But King George is a different musician. It's also a famous country musician. But it's not, I don't believe it's George Jones. I think it's a different country artist.
Okay. So, I think that there are a few songs on this album that stood apart in regards to general concept, theme, or message, and I'll talk about each of those songs. So the first one, I think, the first song that feels kind of like a breath of fresh air in regards to what we are talking about is Hang Tight Honey. It's still very country, and from what I understand, this was kind of like the big single from this album, or the first single from this album, the one that was like really like advertised as like the first big single. And I thought it was a breath of fresh air in concept because it's the first time that she's more so talking about like going out and like being a little bit like acknowledging having like a different work schedule than your partner, but you're both still working hard to like bring in money and provide a good life for each other. And I really liked that sort of concept. It felt like it was a break from the whole like when I'm happy, I drink beer with you. When I'm sad, I drink beer alone kind of vibe that we've had since, like, before that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I like horses, and I'll reference horses a lot, and trucks. And so I was like, okay, finally it feels like we're talking about something other than the tropey, like, country things. So I felt like that was a breath of fresh air. I also really liked... lyrically, I was surprised that I did, because starting the song, I was kind of just like, okay, it's another one of these, like, just like another generic kind of country song, and it surprised me, actually, the lyrics of middle of it, when I realized that she was kind of having this retrospective to herself pep talk, or like a pep talk to her previous self. I actually thought that was a really nice concept for a song, and while, you know, it still kind of feels like the sad country vibe, just the way that it was written felt very like, I can see the growth in myself, and now I'm going to talk about that. And I thought the way that that was packaged, almost like a letter to old self, was a really nice package for that song. So I was pleasantly surprised by that. And I think the most there are a lot of songs on here that talk about like love and relationships. I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not knocking that. I think that that's a theme that, you know, most people on this earth go through at some point. So it's very relatable in those ways, and I think that that's great. I think the most fun way that she talks about love in this whole album is the song, which it's on the deluxe version, Yesterday, All Day, Every Day.
Yeah.
I think that is the best song lyrically in regards to love. It has the best rhyme schemes. I think it has some of the best word pictures. And overall, I think, like, you know, in the concept, it's the best I like you, and here are all the ways that I want to tell you and prove that to you. So that concept's done a couple times on the album, but I think this is the best package of that. And lyrically, it's the most clever. I think it's got the best, like, catchy rhythm and rhyme schemes. I just really liked the writing style. So those 3 specific songs, I think, are the 3 that stood out the best to me in regards to, like, the lyrics and writing. They felt like the most standout as a little different. And unfortunately, the reason I only give this half credit is because of everything else kind of feeling very samey in regards to what we're talking about and how we're kind of moving it. There is another song that I think was a little clever in its delivery, and that was the song Ring Finger. Not a song I would necessarily recommend for children to listen to, but I thought that some of the like lyrics and wordplay was very clever in that song as well. But I did think that it still felt a lot like the Jilted Lover kind of concept. So again, I had a fine time. It wasn't like I was like bored at any point, but I wasn't like fully like engaged into the lyrics, with the exception of the songs that I've mentioned. So again, good, but kind of, I don't even want to say generic, because I don't necessarily think that that's true. I think it's, if you like country, this is it. Like, this is good. You will be perfectly satisfied, I think, with the lyrics and writing of this album, if this is the kind of music that you like the best or like often. So half credit, 1 point out of 2.
Okay, so I actually gave this 1.5 out of 2, and I think it's interesting. This is one reason that we started this podcast, is because we wanted to be able to introduce each other to content that maybe Tori really likes that I'm not a big fan of, and so, or I'm a big fan of and Tori doesn't really like, and get different perspectives on it, which I think is, the more polarizing content we have, I think is more interesting. It makes for better content, I guess, but I am definitely more of a country music artist fan or country music fan than Tori is. So, and interestingly, she was the one that actually suggested that I pick this topic, because I'd been listening to it pretty recently, and I initially didn't want to pick it because I knew Tori wasn't really a big fan of country music. So I felt like I had her blessing to pick this topic. But I do think it's an interesting perspective, because Tori, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Tori, for lyrics and writing, Tori's focus on the score that she gave is more so on the content.
Yes.
And mine is more on the, like, the style or the quality of the writing itself, and not as much on the content.
Okay.
So I gave it 1.5 out of 2, because I think the way that these songs are written very well. I completely agree. If you're listening to a country music album, I think the kind of tropes that you're going to be listening to somebody talk about their truck, their dog, and their heart being all broken. And so it's, I think, pretty consistent in this album that the content of country music is very much, there's a lot of tragedy in country music, but the way that that's written can often be, you can have really sad content, but the song is really high energy.
I want to input here, and country music is not the only genre that does this.
Right.
There are tropes in almost every genre, I would say. You've got like crooner jazz is pretty much all about relationships, and like, that kind of thing. Pop punk has a lot of angst in it. So like every genre kind of has their tropey topics. This is not unique to just country as a genre.
Right. So I think that in the sense that you are picking up a country album, you kind of know what content the album is going to have. Just like you pick up a Paramore album, you kind of know what content you're getting in for. So, but I think Lainey Wilson's approach is very well done. Her writing style is pretty consistent in and of itself. I think that can lend itself to being a little bit, not vanilla, but it's very consistent, which can lean into a little bit of redundancy. But one thing I like about her writing style is she does a lot of wordplay in her songs. So she sings, like we just talked about, the first song of the album is I Can't Keep Trying to Keep Up with Jones, which is a play on Keeping Up with the Joneses. The song Somewhere Over Laredo is an interpolation of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Bell Bottoms Up is kind of a play on bottoms up, turning a glass over and drinking. So the titles have a lot of wordplay, and then lyrically she has a lot of wordplay. So Country's Cool Again has a lot of play on words in that song. So she does a lot of wordplay that kind of latches onto certain, images or kind of calls back to pop culture moments. For example, Yesterday, All Day, Every Day, she talks about how, the content of the song is singing about how I would repeat a day with you every day, and she sings Stuck in a Loop like Punxsutawney, so like Groundhog Day, the film. Yeah. So there's a lot of references and wordplay that are used. The song 4x4 by you. It's just, I want to be in a 4x4 car by you. King Ranch, King George, King James. It kind of has that repetition of kings, 3 different kings, if you will. So she has a lot of kind of play on words in that sense. And then she also does a really good job of painting these word pictures for you. So it's as if you're sitting in the room with her and you're seeing what she's seeing. So for example, in, Keep Up with Jones, she sings about, this kind of raucous party life that she's trying to keep up with and she just can't do it. Last night I felt like a $2 pistol. This morning I feel like I've been shot. And, I've been known to play possum on a bar stool sitting. Just that kind of mental picture in the song Call a Cowboy. She sings about, in the chorus especially, she's lyrically it's painting this picture about a cowboy you best be banking on him hanging on for more than 8 seconds. So like a cowboy that would hold onto a bull for more than 8 seconds. He's if I'm remembering the lyrics right, he's rock steady, loaded, locked and ready from his boots to his Stetson. So you just get this mental picture of what a cowboy looks like and how he's red, white, and blue, tried and true, like the grit in his voice. You have this full picture of like who this cowboy is, and you just immediately picture in your mind exactly what a traditional, like, red-blooded American cowboy is. And I think that lyrical style lends itself to just painting this really nice picture of exactly what Lainey Wilson wants you to see. And I think that's pretty, that is a tenet of country music that we kind of expect in country music that we might not expect in, pop music, rap music, pop punk music. Other genres don't necessarily have that kind of poetic imagery that she has. And I also think that she, in her writing style, focuses really well on different rhyming schemes. Those rhyming patterns are really nice, so that makes the song really catchy and memorable. But then she also focuses on the cadence of the song, so the way that the words are said. Sometimes that cadence of the song takes a little bit more precedence over the rhyming. So in the song Broken Hearts Still Beat, she sings about, still pumping, still running, still dreaming. So the way that those words kind of come out of her mouth and the rhythm of the song are emphasized just as much as, a lyrical rhyming scheme of the song, which is nice. And then even sometimes she has these half rhymes in the song County Chicken. She says, I might be fibbing if I told you that I didn't. Those songs clearly don't rhyme, but they're close enough that the rhythm, fibbing and didn't, it catches the ear really nicely. So I think that her style of writing is just really, really nice. And I'm not saying that you don't hear that in other country artists, but I do think that for just as this in this album as a whole, it's a really nice, it's just very consistent across the board. I don't think there's any song that you have that's written lyrically really, really strong, and then the next song track on the album, you're like, this is the most simple, like, nursery rhyme song ever. It's very consistent across the board. I think the lyrically in Good Horses, I think, is written really, really well. Again, you have this mental imagery of, a horse that doesn't need a rope or a fence or all of these things to kind of hold it in place. You just let it roam, and if it's a really good horse, it'll come home when it's ready, and that nice mental picture of, a person being the same way. Like, you don't have to tie me down. I'm going to come back and come home to you in the same way. And that kind of same lyrical content, I guess, is kind of expressed consistently throughout in something like Hang Tight Honey or, things like that. There are a few songs that I think are very conceptual, so it's not necessarily autobiographical, but I like something like, Ring Finger. But then a song like Hang Tight Honey or Counting Chickens does seem a little bit more autobiographical. But yet they all have very universal appeal to the audience as well. I do think that Tori's perspective is not being a country music fan or a big partaker of country music. I think you can argue that a lot of the songs do fall into those country music tropes, but I think the two songs that absolutely fall into the country music tropes are Ring Finger and Whiskey Colored Crayon.
Yes.
And I think those two songs really are not as high of a quality in the sense that they just feel like gimmick songs on the album. It's like, we have a country album, so we gotta have your jilted lover song, and then we gotta have
broken family song,
your sappy tearjerker song,
yeah.
Whatever that looks like. And I feel like, yeah, country music is kind of known for having these, like, Carrie Underwood's Before He Cheats, or Miranda Lambert's, like, Baggage Claim, or I feel like Miranda Lambert has a ton of those songs, or, something about her mama's, it's not My Mama's Broken Heart Ain't My Mama's Broken Heart, or, we have to have these songs by a woman where it's like, it's a woman scorned song, if you will. And so
it's like Carrie Underwood Before He Cheats.
Yeah,
like,
I just said that.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to think of examples, so my brain was trying
it's okay. Yeah, that's I think a really popular, like, song that's kind of gone mainstream.
Even things like, if we go back, even things like Dolly Parton's Jolene.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's different in the fact that she's talking directly to the mistress, right. But it's still kind of like the my heart's broken, jilted lover. Because
I'm not the, I've just not been picked, or, been jilted at the altar, or whatever that looks like. So those two songs, I think they fall too hard into those country tropes. And I think a reason that they feel that way specifically on this album is because all the other songs, I feel like you can sort of feel as if Lainey Wilson is writing these from her own life, except that Ring Finger does not sound like it's written from her life because it's so different from the other songs. And then Whiskey Colored Crayon, you're like, you're writing all these songs about love, and, like, I don't think you're a teacher with a family of, or that I don't think you actually experienced this.
Yeah.
I think you're just telling a story that you made up.
Right.
And Ring Finger kind of feels the same way. You're just telling a story that you've made up, there's nothing wrong with that. You can fabricate a story, and really all music is storytelling.
Yeah.
Which is why we have it on this podcast. But I think that those two songs specifically feel like it's a work of fiction, and everything else feels like it's nonfiction. Yeah. So those two songs I personally don't like, but I also think you can objectively argue that they don't really fit within they don't fit in the same caliber as the other songs on the album. So that's why I gave it 1.5 out of 2. But overall, I think her style and the way that she writes is really well done. It's very singer-songwriter in quality, I think. And so I think that while you could argue the content is very typical of country music, to me, because those songs feel like they're coming from a more organic place, they just happen to be written in the style of country music. I think that's why I gave a little bit more credit to the style, and I didn't really focus as much on the content So 1.5 out of 2.
Okay. So our second category for music is singing and vocal ability, and we allot 2 points for this. And this was actually the hardest category for me. I settled on 1 out of 2, but with a footnote here that it's more, my opinion is actually more positive than it may sound initially from that. So I struggled to go between 1 and 1.5. So I'll talk about my positives first. I think that she hits everything she intends to hit great, note-wise. She, it's obvious that she had a hand in writing because even musically, I can tell that she has written the melodies to fit her voice and her range. So everything that she sings sounds very easy and natural for her. And I think that that's great. You don't want to really listen to a singer like struggling for anything. I think that there are two songs where there is a harmony done by somebody other than Lainey Wilson. That is Good Horses, where she sings with Miranda Lambert. I think their voices blend wonderfully. Mm-hmm. They hit all the same cadence and rhythms, and they've got such similar tone colors that everything feels like an extension of the other's voices. But still being distinct enough that you can tell there are two different people singing. I really like that. The other is Whiskey Colored Crayon, where there is a male singing a harmony. And while I think having a male voice in a song, it gives a freshness to the album, because all we've listened to are female vocals except for this one song. The problem with this one is, and this kind of falls into production as well, so this is, again, kind of connecting the two, but one, he's mixed too loud, and he kind of overtakes Lainey Wilson in some phrases. And two, I don't think that his tone blends as well with Lainey Wilson's as Miranda Lambert's did. So I found it slightly distracting. He hits all of the harmonies. It's not like he's singing poorly. It's not anything like that. It's just that it doesn't quite feel as smooth as the blend does when Lainey Wilson's singing with herself or singing with Miranda Lambert. So maybe if they had mixed that differently, I would have liked it better, but I didn't care as much for that. However, I did appreciate the fresh voice. It was nice to have another voice that, you know, to kind of just like mix it up a little bit. So, good and bad things about that. She has a really, really great note slide in the final chorus of, Hang Tight Honey. Mm-hmm. Really enjoyed that. I love a good vocal slide. In Counting Chickens, she has these really great sort of like quick note runs all throughout the song. Quick note runs are the hardest ones to do, and she nails those really well. I am unsure how I feel about the very interesting talking that happens in Ring Finger. On one hand, it feels like sort of an homage to Johnny Cash, with this sort of like low tone, she has a natural rasp and grit to her voice, mm-hmm. which is unusual, I think, in female singers, but she has that. So she's got that natural low raspy voice when she's talking, and it's all very low, like very toward the bottom of her range talking. It was jarring for me. I was like, okay, here we go. And then she started and I was like, but I didn't necessarily hate it. I just felt like it was almost so different that I wanted to ease into that a little bit better. It's not like she did it poorly or anything like that. It just felt odd, and I didn't expect it, and I'm not sure if it paid off in the end, but I tried to think of it, and I'm like, okay, you know, this is not my normal genre. I don't normally sit in this circle of music. In my head, I was like, she sounds like Johnny Cash, or she sounds like she's trying to do something like Johnny Cash, because Johnny Cash talked through 85% of his songs. That was like his thing. And he had that low, sort of gritty tone. So I was like, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just, we're going to try doing like a Cash kind of thing.
Right.
So again, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I'm still kind of, it was again, part of the, how do I rate this sort of thing? I think her voice is perfect for country. Perfect for country. But I wonder if you pulled the country girl out of the country music, would her voice hold up enough on its own to adapt into other genres? Not necessarily a knock against Lainey Wilson. There are lots of singers in lots of genres, and they sing that genre because that's what they're best at and what they're good at. Again, it happens in all genres. I'm not trying to make this like a bit like a Lainey Wilson drag, but because it's so characteristically country, it feels like she has to stay in this wheelhouse in order to like make her voice shine. And while Ring Finger was the most different vocally of everything else on the album, I want to hear her do different things, yes. But mostly because I'm curious about how her voice color can come out in different contexts is perhaps what I'm trying to say. So I think that she'd nail country. She'd probably do really good in folk and probably gospel type music. But anything else, I'm not sure. Like it seems like she excels in her field, but maybe I don't know how wide the genre scope could go for her. That would be something I would be curious to hear about. If she's ever gone outside of the scope of country in regards to vocals. Maybe that would be a question for you.
Yeah, she has.
Okay. I'd be curious to hear those things because I would love to hear if her voice transforms or if it still sounds very like she's got that twang that just does not really leave. And so while that's characteristic of country music, it makes me wonder if she can chameleon her voice at all for different genres. I don't know that.
Yeah, but I think in this category, I mean, I don't think you have to necessarily, I mean, we can score however we want, but I don't think in this category you have to consider whether or not they could sing a different genre.
Okay, that's fair.
Because, like, we haven't necessarily done that with other artists, like Hayley Williams in Paramore.
Yeah.
That we did. We didn't necessarily consider, well, but what if she wasn't singing on this album?
Yeah.
I think you can just objectively look at it in the context of this album.
Yeah. Well, this point here did not affect my scoring at all. It was just something that I kind of noticed and thought about.
I think, at least to kind of address your prior question, I think in some of the songs I've heard her do with other artists, like she does a song with Post Malone, she does a song with Jelly Roll, I think. She does a song with, I don't remember the artist, but I think I played it for you at one time. The guy that's maybe Australian.
Yes, I like that song.
And so
I don't remember the name.
I don't remember it. It's something about nice to meet you. But, I don't know if that's the name of the song, but they just say that a lot in the chorus. But so she sings with other artists that are not necessarily straight country artists.
Okay.
But my memory of those songs, I think she's still sounds very similar to how she sings on. I don't think she really loses the accent or loses the twang that much, but I think her tone quality adapts well.
Okay. But so then that's good. Sorry, you still had more to say?
No.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were finished, and so I started talking.
No, you're good.
So then that's good. This point did not affect my scoring at all. It's just an observation I made because I think that this comes down to personal preference, and I did not want to let that color this category that much. I struggle to really love a twangy tone. I do. However, I noticed that there are portions of Lainey Wilson's singing that reminds me very much of Dolly Parton, and I like Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
Dolly Parton had a twang too. So I can't be like, well, it's fine for Dolly Parton to have a twang, but it's not okay for Lainey Wilson to have a twang. That I don't think that's a fair judgment. So I'm not going to let that sway my score here in the singing category. However, one big issue I had, and this is my last point, and this is ultimately why I went for 1 point instead of 1.5, is that because of her twang, she loses a lot of enunciation sometimes. And there were multiple songs, like 7 or 8, that I had to pause the song, pull up the lyrics, and look at them as she was singing because I could not grasp what she was saying.
That's very fair.
And so I don't care if you have a twang, but I still need to understand. And I notice it's not just the twang that affects her enunciation, but she also, and I don't know if this is purposeful or not, but she adds additional, like it's all, I don't even think it's a lisp, but she adds this additional, like, it's almost like a, I don't want to call it a lisp, but there's like a whistle that she adds to a lot of her S's, Z's, TH's, things like that. And it feels like she's trying to push more air through the syllable. So I don't know, again, if this is purposeful or not, but it affects my ability to absorb this without seeing words on the screen.
Yeah. I think it's just the way she talks, because her speaking voice has that too.
So that's my biggest problem. It's not even the twang. It's the fact that it's so much sometimes with just her manner of forming syllables that I'm like, I don't even know what that was. Like, I couldn't repeat that line back to you. I have to go look up the lyrics. So I ended up switching to like lyric videos on YouTube about halfway through the album because I was like, at least I won't have to like stop and pull it up. Like it'll just be there. And that helped a lot. But if I was listening to this in the car on a commute, I can't look at the lyrics while I'm driving. So I think that is a significant detriment, unfortunately. Unless you're just like so into country music, it's all you listen to, and your ear has been trained to absorb that style of like singing, then you're probably going to have to look at lyrics or listen to a song multiple times in order to understand what some of those lines are. So that's why I went for 1 point out of 2.
Alrighty, so I actually gave 1.5 points out of 2, but I do agree with the majority of the points you've already made. So I think I kind of summarized like a similar sentiment. I think what Lainey Wilson does, she does very well, but her scope, I would say, is pretty narrow when it comes to her vocal range, the kind of songs that she sings. I would agree. I think that in country music, that is her wheelhouse. She's
not doing any like crazy high in the rafters, impressive, like, you know, oh my gosh, it's Whitney Houston of country. Like, she's not doing anything like that.
And she doesn't even have songs where the key is different, or, well, maybe it is, I don't know. But
I was going to say, I actually am going to talk about that a little bit.
In production. Okay. Yeah. She doesn't have where it's noticeable that her voice is in a different register or a different key. It sounds like every song is written within a very set range. And I think when you're a singer-songwriter or you're writing your own music, that's great because you can sing everything that you've written. And I think one thing that is important for a musician that we don't necessarily talk about in this podcast, but I think it's an interesting distinction, is that if you're going to be a performer and you're going to be touring and singing these songs every night, it needs to be something that vocally you can handle singing every night for 200 plus shows. You know, I think one of her songs sings about 200 nights. One of those songs. That's where the number 200 came from. I'm not saying she did that for, but I think her vocals absolutely fit this genre, the songs individually, the style that she writes in. I think when she sings her own harmonies, she does it really well. It sounds very natural and consistent. It doesn't sound like she's, only able to sing lead, and then you have all these other backing vocalists that have to provide harmonies, which again, that's not a knock if that's how an artist records. I am glad you pointed out, because I was curious if there were any male vocals on this album as a whole. I didn't really notice it in Whiskey Colored Crayon, but that's because I kind of tuned that song out because I don't like it, but I'll talk about that later. I think I agree with everything you said about her singing with Miranda Lambert. I think their voices complement each other extremely well. It makes me wish that there was maybe one other song on this whole album, especially the deluxe version, where she sang with another artist, or maybe even with a male artist, so that we could see or hear her voice blend with another singer and just be able to have like another duet there. It would have just left me wanting more of that because I thought it was so good, but I didn't take off points for that. I think she has a few moments where her voice is, I feel like impressive is a strong word, because she doesn't have this crazy range like you said, but she does have some nice moments. I think in Call a Cowboy towards the end when she sings that's what I call, or that's when I call, I can't remember the lyrics, but when she says my cowboy, and her voice kind of hits a higher note there. And then in the Devil Don't Go There song, I think she has some nice vocal moments there. But I really don't like her voice on Ring Finger. I find it extremely grating and annoying. I think the repetition of, well, first of all, she says rang, R-A-N-G, instead of ring, R-I-N-G, and then when she's like ray, yay, I'll
talk about that in production.
I wrote in vocals, just because you can doesn't mean you should, because I'm sorry, but that drives me insane. It is the reason I skip that song every time it cycles through this album, because I just find that so grating vocally. Production, it's another story. I'll mention that. I genuinely, though, I really agree with all of Tori's points. The reason, though, that I gave this an extra half point is because I gave credit to Lainey Wilson in the sense that her voice is so distinct. It's similar. I think she has a lot of comparison to Dolly Parton because her tone, and I think the way she pronounces words, and a little bit of that twang and that kind of lisp that she has. It's not a lisp, but that the phrasing on some of her S's and things like that, I think is very similar to the way Dolly Parton sings and the way Dolly Parton speaks. So her speaking and singing voice are very similar. Lainey Wilson's speaking and singing voice are extremely similar. So I think that in the sense that her voice is extremely distinct, I think merits some credit. When you have a vocalist that sounds like, every other country female singer, and this is not knocking anything, but I'm not making a direct blanket statement or a one-to-one comparison, but just for instance, in the country genre, Miranda Lambert sounds a lot like Casey Musgraves, who sounds a lot like Carrie Underwood, who sounds a lot like, fill in the blank of any country artist. And again, I'm not singling these people out, but a lot of female country singers sound very similar. They have a little bit of that twang.
I would also wager and say a lot of male country singers fall into that as well, where I'm like, who is this? And then I have to look.
Yeah. So. I mean, Morgan Wallen sounds a lot like Thomas Rhett, which sounds a lot like, Luke Bryan, which sounds a lot like, whoever. So in the same way that I think that if you have a female or male singer who has a very distinct, unique sounding voice, I personally think that merits a little bit more weight in this category. And again, I think that's an objective viewing, while it is my personal measuring. I think that's just how I give credit. So, for example, if you have somebody who, I'm trying to think of just off the top of, like, Johnny Cash, I think, is a great example. If you hear Johnny Cash, you know exactly who it is. It's Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
If you hear Sam Cooke, you know exactly who it is. It's Sam Cooke. If you hear, Steve Perry from Journey, you know exactly who that is. If you hear Bryan Adams, you know exactly who that is.
Patrick Stump from Fall Out Boy.
Yeah, you know exactly who that is. So I think that for Lainey Wilson, when you hear her voice, you know exactly who that is. And I think that that's becoming less and less common in modern music. And I think that because she's so distinct as a singer, regardless of the ability that she has, that's why I gave her that little extra half point, because I think that that's just an impressive thing to note about her voice. So 1.5 out of 2. But I would say if we were only considering ability, I probably would score closer to Tori and give her kind of that half credit. But I think what she does well. But I think I gave a little bit more weight into just that distinctiveness and identifiability of her as a vocalist. So,
all right. So for our third category, we do production. This includes things like composition, musicality, instrumentation, mixing, just to like kind of give you an overview of what this category entails. We allot 2 points, and I gave this full credit.
Wow.
I have one negative. I'm going to talk about it right now, and it is the end of Ring Finger made me want to skip, because and there's like this weird like steel guitar distortion that happens while she's like, and I was like, oh, I hate it. I hate it so bad. And I was like, muscle through. But I didn't take any points off for that. I just wanted to go ahead and throw that out there and get it out of the way.
Get it out of the way. Get it out into the air.
So I think that everything done musically for this album works and does exactly what it's set out to do. And I think there's a lot more experimentation and auditory interest in the music over the vocals. There is a lot of, but it's never so unexpected that you're like, what am I listening to? They have all of the things that you're going to expect in country music. Lots of guitars, lots of steel guitars, lots of banjo, lots of mandolin, lots of violin, those sorts of things. I think it's great. I think that everything is mixed in such a way where whatever the instrument is that's sort of forward or forefront, it all kind of helps deliver that song's momentum, groove, emotion, vibe, that sort of thing. I really, really like that at the very beginning of the very first song, Can't Keep Up with Jones, the song starts with a very natural sounding band tune-up. It's just like you're hearing like the band members like tune up their instruments and then they start. And I thought that was a great start. It feels very reminiscent of like when you go to live theater where there was a live orchestra.
Yeah.
And 10 minutes before or 5 minutes before the overture starts, you hear the band like tuning up and like warming up. And it was very reminiscent of that for me. And I thought that was a really great touch. It kind of felt like things were live. And from what I understand, I did a little bit of research, every instrument that we hear on this album was live recorded. I don't think anything was sampled, except for some of the perhaps things like distortion and like effects that are sometimes used. I think there is a little bit of an effect in Ring Finger. Yeah, so like
the effect was done in post, not live.
Correct.
Is that what you mean?
Yes, from what I understand. Now I could be wrong. Again, I am not knowledgeable about the genre, the recording process for this album, or Lainey Wilson. So please don't come at me. I could be wrong. I'm open to being corrected. That's fine. But from what I could gather and I watched some behind the scenes clips even of like the process behind this, and it seemed like a live band sitting in a room and they were playing the instrument. So I appreciate that. I think that when you have musicians playing instruments, there is a charm to the natural imperfection that humans have, and I think it helps make music feel so much warmer and more relatable. I am not against electronic music. I'm a huge fan of Owl City. There are lots of other artists and groups that I listen to that use electronic music that's sampled or created. I'm not against any of that, but it is a different feel. And I think that if you have a country album and you're not recording instruments live, then it's not really going to feel like a country album. It's not going to have that sort of like homegrown roots, humble grounds vibe that most country artists are kind of going for. So I thought that really helped that. I think that Country's Cool Again has a really great distinction. Each section feels a little bit separated from the other. Not in an incohesive way, but just that it feels like you are in the verse, now you are in the chorus, and that slight separation in the musicality, it really makes that final chorus hit harder, and it becomes a lot more fun. I wrote like, I'm looking at these things because I wrote like smaller versions of the titles.
Yeah.
Broken Heart Still Beats is way more vocal focused over instruments. They pull those instruments way back, and it feels... I'll be honest, it's probably a song that if I was listening to this album, I would probably skip. But if you were like in a sad mood and that song was just gonna like hit you right in the soul or whatever, then I think that what they've done with that song is very appropriate in that it feels like you're sitting in a room with somebody who is singing a song to you. And I think that it sort of pushes the narrative I think that's meant to be behind that song. First song that I thought, wow, I'm listening to too much country music. I'm starting to talk like it.
Yeah.
I think the first song on this album that I was like pleasantly surprised at how different it was, and which is funny because I'd never heard this song before, like prepping for this episode, even though it's literally the name of the album. But Whirlwind sounds like a Fleetwood Mac song. Tell me I'm wrong. That song,
I'll tell you're wrong in the sense that I played that song in the car with you before.
Well, I guess I didn't absorb
it. You tuned it out.
I guess I didn't
You're
absorb
like,
it.
I'm going to disassociate from the country music.
Sorry. That wasn't intentional if that's what happened.
It's
but
okay.
it felt like Fleetwood Mac and a little less country, which I mean, you could argue that Fleetwood Mac has some sort of country and folksy vibes to it sometimes. That's, I guess, true. But I was surprised at how different musically Whirlwind felt, and I was very pleasantly surprised. Really liked that song musically. I also really enjoyed the bridge in Hang Tight Honey. Have you ever, I will talk about this later, but have you ever watched any of the music videos for any of these songs?
I have not, actually.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk about that one later. The bridge in Hang Tight Honey has a really cool tie-in, I think, into the music video, but again, I'll talk about that later. But I think the bridge itself is very nice in Hang Tight Honey. I was a little confused when we started 4x4 by You, and we have this sort of like 70s gospel organ vibe, and then it does not carry on into the rest of the song. So I was like, huh? When the actual like song part started, because the intro felt so different than everything else that happens in that song. And I don't think that sort of like organ synth even continues into like the verse and chorus. I did not hear or recognize it if it was there.
It does, actually.
I couldn't recognize it if it was there. It felt very different from the intro.
Yeah, I'm not sure now.
Great violin. This song was kind of a for me.
Which
but
one?
Peace, Love, and Cowboys.
Yeah.
The strings in it are great. I really enjoyed the violin in that song. But a lot of that song is kind of generally forgettable. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It just feels very samey. lots of like emotional weight. I think that's very appropriate, both musically and vocally. I wasn't sure where to put this, but I think overall it kind of was the production of that. A lot of if you are a country music fan, a lot of these songs are going to be really catchy to you. And I think that's great. I think it's meant to be that way. She uses a lot of repetition in a way that doesn't feel too played out or like she's beating a dead horse, even though she talks about those all the time, horses. She's not beating the dead one too much in repetition.
How many times does she sing about horses in
Too many. I didn't count.
I don't think it's quite as many as trucks.
No.
There's like a joke, like not on this album, but on other albums. Apparently Lainey Wilson always has a song about some kind of vehicle.
Yeah.
She has a song called Heart Like a Truck, and then there's 4x4 by You, and then she sings about King Ranch, which King Ranch is a truck, and so she's very big into vehicular allegories.
Last thing I want to talk about is Yesterday, All Day, Every Day. She has 4 key changes in that song.
Oh yeah, she does.
4!
Yep.
4 of them! That's a lot, but I really liked it. But the reason that she can do that is because the melody of that song is written very simply and very easily. Mm-hmm. There's really not a huge range in note range in the chorus. So yeah, you can raise it half a step 4 times and it's not a strain in the voice because everything's written so closely together. Yeah. So it's really easy to just be like, burp, burp, burp.
It's like you're harder, just stepping up the scale.
It's harder when your note range is like this in a chorus and now you're like really pushing it toward like the top of her range. But when everything's real close, it's a lot easier to do that. However, there's a lot of like interest to the ear listening to that song because it feels like every time the step goes up, by the end you're like, Gah! Like, I don't know, it just like, to me, I love key changes because it's in my opinion, it's sort of like a auditory way to raise the stakes, not in like a tense or negative way, but it just feels like we're getting a little bit more excited. We're getting a little bit more determined. Whatever the message of the song is conveying, it just elevates it just a little bit more. So like if it was like a fight song or like a rallying song or something like that, when you step it up, everybody feels like it's getting more unified and more people are joining. So like it just depends on what the message is, but 4 key changes is impressive for any song nowadays, considering that the art of the key change seems to be lost in modern music in general. I love a key change and I love when it's done well, and when you can pull off 4 in like a 4-minute song, that's pretty good. So I didn't have any complaints other than ring finger for production, but not enough to take off any points. So full 2 out of 2 points for production for me.
Alrighty, so I gave this 1.5 points out of 2. So agree with a lot of the things Tori's already said. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse on this one. I do think production wise overall, it's very, very guitar heavy. So I started keeping track of like the different guitar motifs that we hear in different songs, and I just had to stop because it would have been this whole podcast. But in the first track, Keep Up with Jones, there's like this nice surprising surf rock guitar sound during the, I guess technically it's like an instrumental bridge, if you will. In Good Horses, it's very much an acoustic lead-in, just finger picking on an acoustic guitar, which is different from the acoustic guitar sound in Counting Chickens. That's kind of the overlying sound, which is different from the steel guitar we have in Call a Cowboy that just has this nice build and crescendo there. Overall, which I think that I don't think there's anything wrong with your album being guitar heavy or being maybe like guitar forward in your sound, if you will. But it does risk sounding very redundant across the board, which is one of the reasons I didn't give this full points, because I think although I like it and I think what they do works, it some of these songs do kind of bleed into one another and sound like you could replace one with the other, given that it's very guitar forward in sound, and Lainey Wilson's vocals are her range is, I wouldn't say her range is narrow, but she doesn't have this, really low song, slow, quiet ballad here, and then this really high register song here. So a lot of her songs sound somewhat interchangeable with one another, but I think it works. I have to admit that in the album as a whole, which we'll talk about in our next category, I think it works very well, but I think on a strictly production level, the overall sound of the album does tend to kind of overlap, if you will. And I think also I chose to review the deluxe version of the album because personally, I really like a lot of the songs that are on the deluxe version that are not on the original release. But also because of that, there are more songs on that album. I think 4 or 5 additional tracks. And
5, I believe. Because
of that, it does also give you a higher risk of some of those songs overlapping with one another or making the production of one song sound very similar to the production of the other song. And that's just statistically a possibility when you have a lot of when you have more numbers. I really liked the flow when you're listening through the album from the beginning to end. There's this really seamless flow between Hang Tight Honey and A Bar in Baton Rouge. And then A Bar in Baton Rouge has this nice like instrumental outro. So, you wouldn't think those songs would really go together, or it would be awkward flowing from one to the other, but I think it's really nice. I think it was a nice production choice. I think Somewhere Over Laredo is a great song production wise. And Lainey Wilson has publicly said like it is an interpolation of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and I think it has some nice instrumental notes that pay homage to the original Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So it's clearly not trying to just like, we copied one of the biggest songs ever written. Haha, fooled you. You never would have known. Like, no, it's a very clear like homage to that original song. And I think it's done very well musically. I think Bell Bottoms Up is this nice, like, again, it's one of the deluxe tracks. It's this nice, like, line dance, like Texas dance hall feel song. And it has this great like rhythm to it that's very distinct from the other songs on the album. Again, I have to say, Ring Finger, it gets to the point where it's cacophonous. I like that it's tried something different with this very guitar heavy kind of
spoken
word. It's trying to do something different. And I think that the something different fits the like theme and message of the song, but it's not pleasant to the ears. And I think that that's a problem. I completely agree with Tori, especially when you get to the end. I'm like, okay, I gotta quit. Like I gotta bail out and skip because I can't handle listening to it anymore.
I was about to have to take a break after that song.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
I'm gonna just like, I'm getting a headache from this song. I will say though, it is interesting in that like spoken word part of the song, it's only mixed to the left audio.
Oh.
So, cause I listened to this in like headphones.
I listened to it on left and right speakers, but I did not notice that.
Yeah. So the spoken word, her speaking is only in the left audio, which again, I think it lends to this kind of like cacophonous vibe that they're going, this chaos vibe that they're going for when one experiences something that horrible that, I got the ring and he got the finger. Mm-hmm. And, clearly it didn't end well in, your romantic life did not end well. I think it lends to how somebody feels in that moment. But I think that it's a little bit of a swing and a miss moment where I just think we could have done something to kind of keep that same feel of the theme of that song, like the message of that song, without it being offensive to the ears.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just again, that falls into my personal taste. It's why I personally don't like that song. However, I think objectively it is the dissonance in that song, the cacophony of that song it just makes it very unpleasant. And I don't know how long. Can you pull up the track list again? I don't know the runtime of that song.
It is 3 minutes and 39 seconds. And I would say the last 25 to 30 seconds are that.
Yeah. It's
like, whoa.
I mean, it's not even like the longest song on the album. The one right before it, 4x4 by You, is almost 4 minutes long, but it feels like it is an eternity because it's that unpleasant to hear. But overall, I really like the sound. I think there's a lot of mix of styles. I think that the styles chosen for each song fit. Lyrically, they fit Lainey Wilson's voice. Everything is very complimentary in the production of this album. So I almost gave it full points, but I do think that there is a little bit of redundancy in the production, in the sense that some of these songs, I've listened to this album multiple times all the way through, and when you're trying to be a little more economical with your time, maybe on a commute or a certain car ride, I think because a lot of these songs from a production standpoint sound very similar to one another, and it's a very guitar forward song, and this, I guess you could consider this into the next category, but I considered it in here because the production of the song is very similar, or the production of each individual song on this album as a whole is relatively similar. Although I do think, yes, there are a lot of different genres or styles in each song. In listening to the album as a whole, you get to the point where there are some songs that you would skip because there's another song coming that maybe you like better or is a little bit more similar. And because of that, I think that there's a little bit of redundancy in the production aspect of the song, so I didn't give it full points. And then Ring Finger, I think, is not good. Sorry if that's like your favorite song on the album.
Defend it to us in the comments and help us to see it.
If that's your favorite song on the album, I hope your breakup went okay. Yeah, because
I hope you're healed.
I hope you have healed from that
and got a lot from the pawn shop.
Yeah. So 1.5 out of 2.
All right, so our fourth category, which we add just for music, is album flow and cohesion. We allow 1 point for this. I gave this half a point because is it cohesive? Yes. Is it redundant? Also yes. A lot of these songs do feel like the one before it and the one after it and the ones surrounding it. And if this is what you like, you're gonna like that. You are. And everything's going to feel very familiar to a country fan. And, if this is your jam, then you're going to be jamming. For somebody like me, what happens is it gets fatiguing after a little while. Whirlwind is the first song that feels different than anything surrounding it, like musically to your ear. And by the time I was in Baton Rouge, if you cannot pause this song and you need to have a bathroom break, Baton Rouge is the song to do it because it's very long. And I don't think it's a bad song, but it's too long, I think. This is the deluxe version's already pretty lengthy. It comes to 68 minutes, which is a feature film sometimes.
I think you should take a bathroom break on Ring Finger. So.
That's also true. But if we're talking about auditory interest, then Ring Finger at least has more going on than Baton Rouge.
That's fair.
So I do think that while that song, again, it's not bad, I'm not knocking the song, it's a little fatiguing there. And I also got a little fatigued around toward the end of the album when we were at Devil Don't Go There, which we haven't mentioned at all, either of us. But that song I got a little fatigued on. I was like, okay, I'm ready to just keep moving on. Thankfully, that song's not too long. And then by the time we were at King Ranch, King George, King James, I was also ready for something different. We do have that nice change, I think, in Somewhere Over Laredo. But then it felt like to me, once we hit King Ranch, King George, King James, that we had almost taken a step back into what we had just been doing previously. So I gave it half credit because I think everything fits with each other. Nothing other than other than Ring Finger, everything feels natural to what you would want from Lainey Wilson, expect from Lainey Wilson, want from country music, expect from country music, with a few nice unexpected twists to it. So I think the balance is okay. This is your score for this. If you ever do our score sheets, which are available on our website, you can do these along with us. Little plug. Your score for this category, I think, is unfortunately going to be, it's just going to be very difficult to not let your personal taste and preference color this, because it's going to depend on how you naturally lean toward this genre of music, whether some of these songs are fatiguing to you or not. There are some genres of music that I can listen to and, it's hype music from start to finish, and that might be fatiguing to you, but it's not to me. So it's unfortunate, and we do try to separate those things in each category, but that's why I went for half credit, because I'm acknowledging that my personal taste and preference does affect this redundancy / consistency balance. Now, another thing that we talk about sometimes, and so I'm just going to mention briefly, is does the title of the album and cover art fit the theme? And I think yes, it does. It took me a while to figure out what Lainey Wilson is sort of peeking up over on the album art. At first I thought it was mountains. I actually think it's a saddle.
It's a horse.
It's a horse. Okay.
It's a horse.
But
you can pull up the picture. Sorry, you guys can't see it, but it's the back of a horse.
So when the thumbnail is this big on my phone screen, to me, I thought it was supposed to be like a mountain and her head was like the sun coming up over it. That's genuinely what I thought.
That's so funny.
Which, again, I think fits okay. It's a little fabricated, I guess, but it would still fit in my head, the idea. I was thinking this is very somewhere over Laredo now.
Yeah. No, it's the back of a horse.
When I realized that it was a horse upon further inspection, I was like, okay, that also fits. Horses is a very running theme throughout the course of the album. So, and I think the title Whirlwind is very appropriate as well, considering that she does talk a lot about love and how love is more difficult than it can appear to be at first. And I thought that was overall, it fit. So 0.5 point out of 1 for album flow and cohesion.
Alrighty. So I actually gave this full points. So 1 out of 1. I kind of went back and forth a little bit on it as well for the same reason, but I kind of took that 0.5 point off in production. So I think that overall, even though I just talked about it being fatiguing in the last category, I do think this is one of the few albums that is a really good listen through album. And by that I mean that each song in this album flows really, really nicely into the next song. Yes, it does get a little fatiguing, but I already talked about that in production. But when you listen from one song to the next, it actually is really nice on the ears. You don't have 2 songs back to back that are so similar that you stopped listening to one or the other. The transition from maybe a higher energy song into a ballad is really nice. I think this is an album that, surprisingly, it's difficult in a lot of genres, but I think this album does a great job at balancing how many songs are higher energy and maybe more have that kind of Western country rock feel versus the really slow, soft ballads. And yet all of the slow, soft ballads aren't thematically sad songs. There are a lot of like sweet love songs or slower, just songs about love in general, or Whiskey Colored Crayon is a slower, softer song. It's not about love at all. It's about a story of a family. So I think that cohesively, all of these songs fit really well with each other. And I think the album flow from one song to the next is done really, really nicely. So that's the biggest reason I gave this full points. I agree also, kind of like Tori mentioned, I think the cover art and the title of the album fit the overall theme and feel of this album. Whirlwind, I think, is a great title track for the album. I think it was a good selection to choose that track to be the title of the album, because I think that there's enough songs on this album that are high enough energy and a little bit of that autobiographical feel that of life being a bit of a whirlwind, and also of love between two people being a bit of a whirlwind. So it's kind of like the microcosm of love, and a micro twister, and then a bigger twister of whirlwind, being love and life being a little crazy, but it's still being a good and fun and enjoyable thing, even though it can be chaotic. So I think thematically everything fits really well. I like how cohesively this type of country music feels a lot more like a Western country album rather than a Tennessee, Appalachia, Georgia kind of East Coast country feel. And I think that it's nice in the genre to hear about things like tumbleweeds and horses and cowboys rather than, good old Georgia and red dirt and mudding and, going to the Broadway in Nashville. Like that vibe. It's not that vibe. It's more like Western country ranch vibe. Mm-hmm. So I think that is nice and distinct. I know Tori mentioned this song, and the two songs that I don't know if they technically would fit. I didn't take off any points because I think you could argue that they do fit. But I think I questioned if Ring Finger really fits this album, just because it is very stylistically different and very loud and kind of, but I guess you could argue, well, in a whirlwind, you have things like that happen in life. So I didn't take points off. But the other one that I was like, does this really fit the album, was Middle of It, which I think thematically,
which was one of my favorite songs lyrically.
I think it's a great song. And I think you could say, does this really fit? Because everything else feels like it's either about love, like a relational love between, Lainey Wilson and her cowboy man, or it's about, music, like partying, like Jones, Yesterday, All Day, Every Day. Well, that's, I guess, about love. Hang Tight, Honey. It's either about kind of autobiographically Lainey Wilson sort of being on tour, playing music. It's about music, or it's about a singular romantic relationship, although Ring Finger is kind of the outlier there. But then you have Middle of It, which seems like it's doesn't really fit in those same thematic aspects, but neither does Whiskey Colored Crayon. But I think you could argue for it being on the album, because when life is a whirlwind, I think you sometimes look back on prior times in your life that you think life is a whirlwind. You thought life was a whirlwind. You're in the middle of it, like in the middle of a storm, if you will. And what you would tell yourself back then is that, hey, it's okay. You're just in the middle of it. You're going to come through on the other side. And I think that you could argue that track fitting the theme of quote unquote whirlwind of the album. So I didn't take off points for those, but I did kind of ponder, do these two songs really fit on this album? And I didn't write it down, but I also think Whiskey Colored Crayon is kind of a weird song. But I didn't take off points because I do think you could argue for any of those songs being on the album. I think you could also argue for really any of those songs, any song on the album being able to be removed from the album with the exception of the title track. So I would say overall, I think there's a lot of cohesion and flow on this album. So that's why I gave it full points. 1 out of 1.
Okay. All right. We have 2 more categories. Our next to last is always personal taste and preference. We allow 2 points for this. I went for half credit. So 1 point out of 2.
I'm surprised.
I was surprised too. But the thing is that with country music in general, this is not the genre that I frequent. It's not the genre that I keep up with new releases or new artists. This is the genre that I listen to usually through somebody else. And I'm content with that. I'm not really here aiming to let me just get more into country, or let me try to bolster a disdain for country. It's neither of those things. It's just I kind of sit in this middle, like, if somebody shows it to me, I will take the songs I like and I will leave the songs I don't, and I just pick and choose that sort of thing. I don't have a lot of personal investment in the genre is kind of how I would summarize that. I'm so happy though to add my favorite tracks from this album to my general playlist and enjoy them fully. And I listen to most of my country music. I listen to country music the most when I'm with Holland, because Holland keeps up with it a lot more than I do. And she'll be like, oh, let me play you this or whatever. And so I have a fondness for listening to country music based on my association with listening to it with my best friend. So there is attachment to it in that way. But again, my own personal investment and seeking out is not really there. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. There are other genres that I don't seek out or whatever, that, you know, I'll listen to them if somebody brings them to me, but I'm not going to go seek them out for myself. So my preference for Lainey Wilson comes from association, suggestion, recommendation, and then enjoying what I enjoy and not enjoying what I don't enjoy, and kind of having this that sort of freedom to sort of like, it's like a buffet. I picture country music like a buffet. I will go in and I will pick and enjoy the things that I like, and I don't feel bad or like a bad fan for not enjoying what I don't enjoy, because I don't have the investment into the artist or genre as a whole. Where like if something like when Owl City comes out, I feel like I've invested lots of years into being an Owl City fan, and so I will listen to this album start to finish, and there can sometimes be like well, now I feel bad because I don't like this song. Well, I never feel bad about not liking a country song, because it's fine. There are others that I do. So I just have this very middle of the road relationship with country. And so because of that, I'll give it half credit. So 1 point out of 2.
Alrighty, so I went with my gut on this one, and I actually gave this 2 out of 2 for personal taste and preference.
Yeah.
So
was Lainey Wilson your most listened to artist last year?
No, she was not my most listened to artist, but Good Horses was my number 1 track on my Spotify Wrapped. So
she was in the Spotify Wrapped.
She was in the Spotify Wrapped. So I felt like I had to kind of say 2 out of 2. So although there are a few songs that I skip on this album, it came for me at a good time in my music rut, because it's refreshing to hear music with heavy singer-songwriter skills and a variety in sound. So I'd kind of like fallen into this rut where I was only listening to music that I had previously liked and was not really finding anything enjoyable in current or modern music.
Like new to you stuff?
Correct.
Okay.
Or, well, just new and current. This album originally came out in 2024, and then the Deluxe released in 2025. So I started listening to this in maybe summer, fall of 2025. So it came at a good time. It was kind of fresh and new in its release, and I actually had never heard of Lainey Wilson until I saw her on a kind of a TV special presentation of the Grand Ole Opry, and it was actually a rerun, and I was like, I don't know who this is, but she's got a nice voice. I actually like her.
I remember you texting me about that at the time.
Yeah, and then I just started listening to this album, and I was like, wow, I'm actually really enjoying this, and so it kind of pulled me out of this, like, I guess you could call it a rut, where I really was only listening to my playlist of songs from, like, you know, that it was already stuff that I knew and was familiar with. And so it was nice to have something kind of new and refreshing. So this album definitely made it into my kind of rotation, my playlist. It's an album. It's very uncommon for me to find an album that I actually like listening to the album as a whole. And so I think since we are covering this album as a topic, it's only fair to give it full credit for me. Plus it also caught me at a good time because I was in my Red Dead 2 Red Dead Redemption 2 era.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a little bit of a cowboy era
Arthur
right
Morgan
now.
would love this song.
Yeah, probably not, but, you know. So it hit me at a good time where I'm kind of been leaning into kind of Western, you know, coded things and just finding it fun and interesting and enjoyable. So it came like right at the perfect time. It found me in its / my sweet spot. So I gave it 2 out of 2.
All right. So our last category for music is creativity. We allot 1 point. This one was also kind of a difficult one for me, and I think a lot of this is going to come down to my straight lack of knowledge about the current scene of country. So I apologize if you don't like my score, but I went for 0.5 point out of 1. It's from my limited knowledge perspective, Lainey Wilson has become very iconic in country music. From what I understand, she is one of the it ladies in country music right now, and I think that her spot is deserved. I'm not trying to say anything against that. However, from my limited perspective, it's not like anything crazy unpredictable happened on this album in regards to theme, vocals, or production. And while I think all 3 of those things are perfectly fine, adequate, and good in this album, nothing was like, whoa, I've never heard a country artist do something like this before. So again, my limited scope, that is my perspective. What I wanted to talk about more, because y'all know me, I'm a music video watcher.
You are also a movie watcher.
I'm also a movie watcher. But there are actually quite a few music videos. And if there's not a music video, then Lainey Wilson did an official lyric video for every song on the entire album. But the ones that have music videos, I would consider Good Horses half a music video because it's more of just like a live playing video of her and Miranda Lambert. There's not like a story. But Whirlwind has one, Hang Tight Honey, 4x4 by You, Somewhere Over Laredo, Bell Bottoms Up is also another live video, and Peace, Love, and Cowboys. Everything else has an official lyric video where Lainey Wilson's just like walking and like posing, and then there's like lyrics, you know? So everything technically has a video, but I wanted to talk about some of the ones that are like story narrative based. The Whirlwind music video actually made me laugh because it feels so toxic. So the narrative is there's this like girl or whatever, and she gets like frustrated at her diner job, so she like goes outside to like sulk about it, and then she sees this like bad boy with his truck, and he like sweeps her off her feet, and they like start a relationship, and it's a little unclear, but one or both of them is breaking the law, and so they're on the run from the police for like most of the music video.
Great.
And it just felt very toxic. I just thought it actually kind of made me laugh a little bit. But very weird. I do like
also very country music.
This is true.
So
Hang Tight Honey though is probably my favorite music video of all the ones that I watched, because it has this retro 60s vibe, and then right before the bridge it like pushes forward into like a more modern vibe, and so it's Lainey Wilson on like those old-timey like 60s talk shows, and she's like performing, and she's in like 60s garb, and like her hair is like done up in like a whatever those were called, like beehive or whatever, and it's very cute. I thought it was very fun, and it directly sequels in the music video for 4x4 by You, where at the very end of Hang Tight Honey, she's picked up by her man in the truck, and that's where it picks up in the 4x4 by You music video, which I thought was very cute.
Creative.
The Somewhere Over Laredo music video is very odd. I think the concept here, because it is an interpolation of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, is this Lainey Wilson falls asleep and wakes up in a new world. So it is kind of like a thing, but the CGI is very weird. There's like a weird CGI dog that is very clearly not real, and it was a little bit of like a trip to watch that one.
Maybe that was the point.
Maybe I think it had to be. And it's a huge homage to Wizard of Oz without having like very direct imagery. It's just, it feels like the same sort of concept. So I just wanted to talk about those. But overall, with creativity, I know that my lack of knowledge goes into my score, and I apologize for that, but I wanted to try to be as fair as I could be with my limited knowledge, and that's why I gave it 0.5 point out of 1.
Alrighty, so I actually give this full points, so 1 out of 1 for creativity. This I also went back and forth on, but I'll kind of get into why I gave it full points. I think some of the best songs are on the deluxe edition of the album, so that kind of weighed into creativity because there are technically 2 versions of the song, and I think it's very interesting in the sense that the songs on the deluxe edition were released prior to the deluxe edition came out as singles. So I kind of like that. I like when artists release new music and then they give it to you on an album with the other songs that have kind of inspired or predated those songs so that you have like a full cohesive album. Unlike something, again, not to make a 1-for-1 comparison or by any means, but how Paramore has the singles album, which is literally 3 songs. It's like, it would be nice if those songs were on an album or the album that kind of inspired them, maybe like their self-titled album or whatever. It'd be nice to have an album that you can listen to where it still cohesively fits into that. If there wasn't a deluxe version, I might not give it as much credit because I do think some of the best songs on this album are on the deluxe album. But the biggest reason I gave full points for creativity is exactly why I think that you didn't feel like you were an expert enough. I would not call myself an expert, but I do think this album stands out very much in current country music. So the top country artists of 2025, I looked it up. I tried to look up the top Billboard's top country artists for 2024, but you have to be a subscriber to Billboard magazine, and I'm not going to do that just for this one podcast episode. But the top country artists of 2025 were Morgan Wallen, who's a pretty big country artist, Shaboozey, who did the song Getting Tipsy, Zach Bryan, Jelly Roll, and Post Malone. Number 14 was Taylor Swift because she re-released the Red album, which classifies as country music. Number 22 was Lainey Wilson, and then Beyonce was number 25. Also, in the year that of the Grammys when this album was released, this album was nominated for Country Music Album of the Year, and it kind of like controversially, multiple people have said that it was a big controversy, but that was the year that Beyonce's country album Cowboy Carter swept the Grammys that year. So I think it's interesting to note that a lot of country artists that were charting when this album came out are predominantly male, for one. The top 5 artists are male. I think number 6 or 7 top country artists was a female artist. I did not write her name down because it's not somebody I'm familiar with. I'm sure I'm going to get a ton of hate for that. And then Taylor Swift was on there as well, beat out Lainey Wilson. But also the sound of those artists. I mean, you have Jelly Roll, you have Shaboozey, you have Post Malone.
Yeah.
None of those artists really, I would say, fit the country genre.
They're definitely not like the classic Americana country vibe.
Right. And so I think it's important to note that this album, that Lainey Wilson won quite a few accolades with this album. So she won, I mentioned it earlier, I have to rewind because I don't have it in front of me right now. She won Country Artist of the Year. She won Country Album of the Year with the ACM Awards. She won, so she was an acclaimed artist, and she actually, in my opinion, sounds like country music. And so I think it's interesting to note that a lot of country music is leaning towards more mainstream sounds, like either pop, rock, or rap. And Lainey Wilson, I think, especially because of her vocal sound, continues to sound very country. I mean, say what you want about Beyonce, but her voice is not a country voice. So if you loved her Cowboy Carter album or you hated it, I personally haven't even listened to it because I'm not a Beyonce fan, which is probably going to get me canceled. But I think you can argue that a lot of these artists that are charting and getting all these accolades in country music don't sound country. Now, there are plenty country artists that do sound country and they're doing very well, but I think that it's important to note in that Lainey Wilson's music was able to succeed in an environment where country music is becoming a bit less and less country sounding, and that she is still able to perform well. And I think that objectively this album is a good album. So that was the biggest reason I gave it full points for creativity, because I think it's, you know, if a lot of country artists from like the greats of country music were releasing music today, I don't know if they would have the success because people's tastes have changed. So I think it's very impressive that her music sounds, and you could argue her music sounds more like rock or southern rock than it does country, and that may be true, but I think her voice and that twang and the content of her songs, it still fits the country genre. So I think that it's impressive that she is doing as well as she's doing and isn't getting buried or lost in a music genre and time that is changing and evolving and sounding less and less like she would fit in today's audience. So that's why I give it full points, 1 out of 1.
Alrighty.
So what was your final score for this album?
My final score for Whirlwind Deluxe came to 6 out of 10.
My final score is 8.5 out of 10. So that personal taste, I think.
Yeah, it does.
Bumped it up for me. Alrighty. Any final thoughts?
No. I think I like when we do episodes where our personal taste plays a bigger role in the difference. Like when we have a different personal taste sort of thing. I like doing episodes like that. I think it's good to have episodes where we basically agree with each other all the time. We have plenty of episodes like that, but it's nice to have episodes sometimes where we just have completely different perspectives, and it's not necessarily like, you know, I think you have bad taste because you like this. It's never like that, but it's nice to have conversations where it's like, I'm looking at it from my limited perspective and you have a wider scope, so that does affect how we consume whatever it is that we're talking about. So.
Yeah. Your score was actually higher than I expected.
Oh.
So.
Okay.
I thought
it was about what I expected. I expected to land somewhere in the 5 to 6 range.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was going to be closer to like 4 to 5.
Okay.
So I'm surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised.
I think the production, because I just really did not have any glaring problems with the production side of things, that really helped bolster it. So.
Yeah. Alrighty, are you ready for a few lightning round questions?
Yeah.
So what was your favorite track on this album? Tori's looking at a track list.
Yeah, I am. I'm looking at a track list. I think close second is actually Whirlwind, not for the music video, but for the musicality of it. But I think I'm going to go with Yesterday All Day Every Day.
Oh,
I think that's where I ended up.
Yeah.
So.
My favorite track was number 1 in my Spotify Wrapped. It would be Good Horses.
That's fair.
So that was my favorite track. What was your least favorite track?
It's a tie between Ring Finger and Bar in Baton Rouge for very different reasons. I kind of talked about it, but I felt like Bar in Baton Rouge was just so long. It's over 5 minutes long.
Is it really? It is really long.
And like a minute and a half of that is just instrumental.
Yeah.
So I just felt like that was too much. And then Ring Finger for all the reasons that we've already talked about.
Yeah. Mine would be Ring Finger. A close second to that would probably be Whiskey Colored Crayon, because I think that song is kind of dumb. But I will say,
watch Lainey Wilson listen to this.
She won't. She doesn't even know we exist.
It's true.
Nobody does. We have like 3 listeners. So
thank you, 3 listeners.
Thank you to people that listen. We are very small, but we love you, our audience.
Thank you.
Even
for
if there's,
to our
you know,
stuff.
just Tori's mom listens to us. So, I do think musically I like Whiskey Colored Crayon. I like the rhythm of it and the music of it, but the content, I'm like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Based on your experience with this album, would you continue listening to Lainey Wilson? Would you give another album a try?
Yeah. You'd have to suggest one to me because I don't think I would select one for myself.
At the time of this release, a new album has just dropped.
Oh.
So,
all right.
yeah. So might
I
have
would
to
give
listen
it a
to that
shot.
one together.
Yeah.
So
I would give it a shot.
Alrighty. What track from this album would you like to see covered by another artist? And if so, who would you want to cover it?
I know I mentioned her already, but Dolly Parton singing Country's Cool Again would be really fun because she has been in the industry long enough to see the cycles of country music come and go. And so I think it would color a new meaning into the lyrics of that song if Dolly Parton were to sing it.
Yeah, that would be really good.
Or another female that's been around for a while, somebody like Reba McEntire or Martina McBride, which I don't even know if Martina McBride's making music anymore. I don't know. But somebody like that who's just like been around for decades. So.
Yeah. I don't know. I hadn't thought of an answer for this question.
Oh, you wrote it, but I don't have an answer.
I actually just stole your lightning round questions from our Paramore
okay.
episode. So, can you pull up the track list again?
Yes.
Let me look at it.
Tell me if you'd like me to scroll down.
You don't need to scroll. I want to hear like a pop punk cover of Hang Tight Honey.
Okay. That would be a very interesting change.
Yeah. But it's like still has similar vibes.
Yeah.
Or I would want a pop punk cover of Counting Chickens.
That would feel like a weird juxtaposition, but
yeah, but I feel like I could see it work.
Yeah.
You know, even if it was just like a slower, like they didn't like have to make it like change it and make it high energy.
Right.
But I'm trying to think what pop punk artist would be good to hear it. And I'm kind of leaning towards
A Day to Remember. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. There we go. I was thinking of like
they have a couple slower
I was thinking
ballads.
of like Pierce the Veil doing Counting Chickens.
Vic Fuentes.
That'd be amazing.
That would be so funny.
Yeah.
They do. Pierce the Veil has a couple slower ballads, so the voice change would be crazy.
I know,
though.
and I think it'd be really entertaining.
Yeah.
Because it's such like a sweet, like peppy little like
it's very
goofy song.
Yeah, it's very picturesque, dreaming about, your ideal kind of life situation.
Right.
So which I
Yeah.
guess kind of overlaps with a lot of pop punk.
Yeah, but it's
theming.
like there's this band called 11D7. And it's kind of like this pop punk sounding Appalachian country.
They would do a good job, I
album
think.
that they have. But see, I think that if you took a pop punk artist like, I don't know, Pierce the Veil or Fall Out Boy or I don't know. Actually, I think what was it? Oh, who is the guy? I think it might be the vocalist for Sleeping with Sirens.
I'm not super familiar with them, so I don't know.
It might be him. I think that he, like, something like that would be, I feel like they could pull it off.
Yeah.
And they just have a little sprinkle of the pop punk flair in there, and it'd be pretty good. So, if you were going to recommend one track from this album to somebody else, and they can only listen to one song off the album, what song would you recommend to somebody else? Again, I stole this question from you, so.
I'm gonna go ahead and recommend Whirlwind. I know that might seem like the cop-out answer, but I
don't think so.
I think it's one of the most interesting songs to listen to.
Yeah. I think I would pick Country's Cool Again. I think that is kind of a fun, like, it has a lot of the expectations you'd expect from a country song, but it sounds a little bit more, like, it's not like it doesn't sound like a country song, but it sounds a little bit more like Southern rock sounding. So I think it has a little bit more mass appeal to it. But, yeah, I think I would recommend that one.
Okay.
Alrighty. Any final thoughts?
Nope. I think I've said everything I have.
Alrighty. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode. We hope you had a good time. We know that we did, because we always have a good time. If you have an idea of what you'd like us to review next, you can leave us a comment. You can use our suggestion box, which is on our website at lionandmousepodcast.com. You can engage with us on any of our socials. Links to all of that are on our website, lionandmousepodcast.com. If you could please review this episode on whatever platform you're listening. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, all those YouTube things. It's not that we want to boost our egos, but it does just help us, one, get decent feedback on whether or not you like what you hear, but it also lets us know, or helps us reach as many people as we want to. We're all victims to the algorithm. So it's just us trying to reach as many people as we can, because if you like us, we hope that other people would like us too. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for all the support, anything you do, all of our 3 people that listen. We love you guys. We appreciate everything you do. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you in the next one.